Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Unstoppable Dad Project. Appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day to join me here on the little podcast that I have been doing now for the last 18 months. So first of all, thank you everyone for the support. If you're new here, welcome. Before I get into it, I've got a couple of favors that I need to ask. Number one, please make sure that you are subscribed on whatever podcast platform you are listening to this on. So Spotify, Apple, Google, we're on all the podcast platforms. I generally drop a new episode every Saturday morning around 7, 8 o'clock Australian time. But if you want to be notified as soon as it comes out, the best way to get notified is to make sure you are subscribed on the podcast platforms. Obviously, we have the socials as well. Instagram, The Unstoppable Dad Project, and Instagram is at The Unstoppable Dad. Facebook is The Unstoppable Dad Project. I put posts up there, but the first place you will get notified is obviously by subscribing to the podcast on those platforms. Also, too, we have paid programs available, or I have paid programs where I coach you through strength, conditioning, and anything that you might need to try and reclaim your health and athleticism as a dad, as a new dad. If you're finding that you are struggling with that and you would like to book in a time for a chat, there is a link where you can book in a time to have a chat with me in the show notes, or feel free to send us a message on the socials. Now, this way, over the last 15 years, I've obviously coached a lot of people. If you're new here, you won't know. Those of you that have listened will know by now. But we ran a gym for 11 years. Over that time, I had the absolute pleasure of coaching 1,000 plus amazing people to their health and fitness goals. And the reason I mention that is today's topic and today's podcast, the title of today's podcast is Something is Better Than Nothing. And the reason I titled it that is one very, very common thing that has come up very consistently over the last 15 years, and more so in this particular program that I'm doing with busy dads, busy parents, is the idea that sometimes we just need to do a little bit rather than trying to do it all. Because as our circumstances change, and we have a massive change in circumstances, so whether that is becoming a parent, whether it is adding another kid to the mix, or it might be something external outside of the family network where maybe your workload at work has gone up, business has gotten busier if you run your own business. There's a whole bunch of things that can happen. External circumstances, kids get sick. All these things are stuff that can get thrown at us at any point in life and throw a spanner into the works. And it means that sometimes we've either got to A, adjust the plan, or B, we've got to get done what we can. And it's something that comes up over and over and over again with clients that I've worked with and within my own life as well too. And I wanted to spend the podcast talking a little bit about that and talking about the mindset shifts and the mindset changes that needs to happen, because it is such a common story for a lot of busy people where we've had something that has been working for us for a period of time, and then this thing happens and we're unable to fulfill that particular obligation for one reason or another because we prioritize something else, which is okay, right? Like, I'm not here to berate you about your choices. Now, I'm not even going to go into the conversation about should you be prioritizing one thing over another. That's a topic for a different time. What I'm talking about is when the shit hits the fan and we've got to make a decision on either how we move forward or particular actions that we take. What mindset shifts do we have to make to keep ourselves moving forward without guilt, without stress, and without a feeling of overwhelm around the decisions we make in regards to our overall health and well-being? And I'll give you a few instances and a few stories that I've come across. Really common one, right? Like for us within my programs, a lot of people that I work with, especially when they're first starting out, our goal is to get them to do 3 sessions a week. 3 sessions a week is generally manageable for the vast majority of people. It is also a tipping point when you are doing other things outside of those sessions, going for walks, so on and so forth, where you're going to drive some level of adaptation. Now, over a long period of time, there is going to be a minimum effective dose of training that you are going to need in order to actually drive change. And any change that you undertake, there's going to be a level of discomfort. There's going to be a point where it's going to be hard to implement into your life. What we want to try and do, and what I endeavor to do, especially with the style of coaching that I do, and again, if you've listened to this podcast for a while, you will know I'm very, very big on context-specific advice when it comes to training frequencies, when it comes to training programs. I'm very, very big in understanding the parameters in which my clients are working, so the time that they've got, what's happening within their life, because when we try and implement change, especially from, say, a training or a health and well-being standpoint, we need to understand that, and we need to remove as many barriers of entry as we can. And that's where really tailoring programs is so, for me, so important when you're trying to elicit change, because if we can remove as many of those barriers of friction, as many of those barriers of concern as possible, it's going to make it easier to implement the change. Now, that's not saying that it's going to be completely smooth sailing. There's going to be some resistance, right? Because that's what happens whenever you change, whenever you stretch yourself. There is always some level of resistance. And I'm not particularly talking about for today, the initial change, right? I'm actually talking about after you're into it for a while. Because what happens a lot, right, is someone spends some time implementing a new, we're going to use health and fitness, strength and conditioning as an example, right? But for the last 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 6 months, 12 months, right, a particular person has been training really, really consistently for 3 times a week. And they have been ticking those boxes, they've been doing it, they've seen great results. And then what happens? Something comes out of left field, changes circumstances, something happens within their job, kids get sick, personal circumstances change, whatever. And all of a sudden, they're not able to keep up those 3 times a week, right? And then what happens after that? For some people, it falls in a heap and they're not able to continue to do what they've done. And that can cause a lot of guilt, a lot of angst, a lot of anger around not being able to complete the activity that they've enjoyed, they've done, and they've seen results from. And I'll give you an example, and I'll do this over, say, a week, right? And the mindset that I see from a lot of people and where we need to try and shift to. But let's say, for example, your regular training schedule is a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and you do your 3 sessions a week on those days. And then you wake up on Monday, the kids are sick, and you're unable to get into your regular Monday session. So you miss out on Monday. And it's like, that's okay. I'll change. I might do Tuesday, Thursday, Friday this week. And then you wake up on Tuesday and the kid's still sick, so you're still unable to do the session on Tuesday. And then all of a sudden it gets to Wednesday and it's like, well, I can probably do 3 days in a row. But then something happens at work because the kids have been sick. Maybe they're starting to get better. So now you've got to catch up with work. And it's okay to prioritize these things over training, right? Like, this is not you need to prioritize your health talk. This is about real life situations that I see happen with people all the time. And then it gets to Wednesday and we miss out on Wednesday as well. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, I've only got Thursday and Friday to do it. Now, you can do stuff on the weekend depending on how your life's particularly structured. But for a lot of people, they try and do it Monday through Friday because Saturday and Sunday are family time or whatever. Now, for some people, they may just move it to the weekend and they may be okay. But let's use the Monday to Friday example. Get to Thursday and it's like, well, I'm not going to get my 3 sessions in. And then what I see a lot of people do is they just write off the week. Now, there's 2 ways we can look at this, right? And number 1, and the title of this podcast is Something is Better Than Nothing. My personal belief is at that point, if your normal training session is Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and you miss out on Monday and Wednesday, rather than beating yourself up about not being able to get 3 days done, what I would recommend to a lot of people is if everything's okay and you're able to, just go and do the Friday session. Okay, and when you do the Friday session, try and put as much into it as you can, which you should do. And this leads into particularly another podcast about volume versus intensity. You really give it your all. You do a great Friday session, and then the next week you just get back to your 3. So that's the first way to look at it, right? But a lot of people, what they do is they just write the week off. And sometimes you need to write the week off. But back to my original point here, something is better than nothing. Doing that one session is better than not doing anything at all. And rather than trying to force it in on a Thursday, now everything might be good to go by Thursday. Now, this is all very dependent on your individual set of circumstances, right? For some of you, you may be able to just squeeze in the Thursday session and then the Friday session. And look, while you haven't done your 3 sessions, you've done two of the sessions, 66% of the work. Like, you've done quite well to actually fit that in. And when that happens, you almost need to give yourself a pat on the back and acknowledge the fact that, hey, I could have written this week off, but I didn't. And I still got some work done and some quality work done at the back end of the week. But for a lot of people, if we have set training days, especially if we have a set schedule, like a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, right, to try and fit in an extra session on that Thursday, even when everything's gone okay, is going to potentially cause a bit of angst, a bit of anxiety around us trying to fit this particular day in. So sometimes it's better just to leave it on the Thursday, do the Friday, and then just get back to your 3 sessions next week. And then just get back into your regular routine. But instead, what I observe a lot is some people, what they will try and do is they'll just write the whole week off when they could potentially do something at the end of the week. And then what they try and do the next week is they try and play catch up. And what they tell themselves is, I'm either going to do 5 sessions this week and 4 sessions next week. I'm going to do 4 sessions for the next 3 weeks to make up for this week I lost. And when we're busy people with busy lives and we try and play catch up like that, we might be able to make it work for the next week. And for some of us, you may be able to play catch up, okay? This podcast is not particularly designed for you. What I am talking about is those people who, the overall feeling is, I missed out, I feel bad, I'm a shit human. I shouldn't have missed that week of training, and I need to catch up in order to see the results. The short answer is you don't need to play catch up, right? You can have a week off and it's not going to kill your quote unquote gains. What will kill your gains is if you start to get into this mindset and mentality that you've got to continually play catch up, and then you're not able to. Because what I observe and what I see an awful lot within the people that I coach is when they try and play catch up, they go from, and when they have this mindset, they miss a week and then they try and do 4 the next week. But what happens is something else comes up the next week, and then they're only able to get 2 sessions. So now all of a sudden, that week after, they're still trying to do 4 sessions, but now they're trying to do 4 sessions for 4 weeks. And then they might get their 4 sessions the next week, and then they might only get 3 the week after, and then they might get 2 the week after, and then all of a sudden it's this compounding effect where they're just stacking up the weeks where they're trying to do more than what they're actually able to do. And what that leads to is it leads to a negative mindset. It leads to not enjoying the activity that you're doing. And there's a big part where you need to enjoy this stuff in order to be able to be successful at it long term. And if you get caught in this loop, it becomes this self-fulfilling prophecy where you don't feel good enough, you don't feel like you're getting anywhere, and then what that leads to for so many people is just stopping and just giving up. And instead of playing this catch-up mindset, especially when you are a person who has done the particular thing for 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks. Like, you've already set the habit, right? It's just been 1 bad week or 2 bad weeks or even a bad month, right? If you've already set the habit and you know it works, you just need to get back to that plan, because we are always going to have things that are going to come up. And there are 2 ways that you need to look at that. Either one, you need to get done what you can when you can. And for some people, that may look like doing only 1 session for that particular week because there's been a lot going on. For others, it may mean writing the week off and then just getting back to it next week. Playing catch up is a recipe for disaster. It is something that I've observed time and time again for the people that I coach, those busy parents, those busy business owners who have a set schedule and who have done the hard work to set the habit, all of a sudden let it all fall by the wayside because they start to feel guilty because they miss a week. And within strength and conditioning, within training, there's what's the word for it? I've lost my word, but there's a technique which is called a delaod week. And a deload week is generally something that is used when you're prepping, say, an athlete for an event. So within weightlifting, what they do is they taper off, say, a 12-week cycle, and then the week before a competition, they will have what's known as a deload, where they may do a heavily reduced volume, a heavily reduced intensity, or even have a week off in order to let the athlete peak for that particular week. Now, when we're training for general health and fitness, and we're training for overall general health and well-being and general athleticism, we're not actually, when there's not an event that we're training for. And I'm not talking about people who are actually training for an event. There's not an event that we're training for. So if I'm doing a program for somebody, I'm not actually programming a deload week. Now, does that mean that you shouldn't have weeks off? Absolutely not. You should have a week off. But the reason I don't program a deload week is for the exact thing that I've just spoken about. At some point, life will give you a deload. Whether it is going away on holiday, whether it is the kids get sick for a week and you have to write the week off, whether it's you get sick, whatever is going to happen, at some point, life is going to throw you a deload. And for those of us with kids, that will probably happen, I'd say, once every 10 to 12 weeks. Those, if you're listening to this and you've got kids, especially kids who are a bit older, I'm sure that resonates with you. But that's the reason why we don't I particularly don't program a deload week for those clients that I'm working with who are training for general health and well-being. Now, performance is a different kettle of fish, and I've spoken about that on multiple podcasts before. Training for an event, completely different again. But if we're training for general health and well-being, I won't program a deload week because these things will happen, which is why you don't need to play catch up. And if you're using a coach or you're using a program, it's hard for me to crystal ball when that deload week is going to be. So rather than me programming a deload in a program or giving you a week off here, and then the next week, I've got the first week of the next cycle that you're doing, but that's the week that the kids are sick, then we've missed our opportunity, right? I don't know when life's going to throw you a deload, and neither do you. And I'm also the type of person that if you go away on holiday for a week, go and enjoy the holiday. Unless, of course, you really love working out. I'm a psycho and I love working out, right? So I'm probably going to find the gym at the place and go work out. But that's just me. Not everybody's like that, and that's okay. Because you can have that week off. But the big thing is, and the underlying message and where I want to probably leave this podcast and finish it off is, it's all about being consistent over the long term. And I'm not talking about 6 weeks, 10 weeks, 12 weeks. I'm talking about 6 years, 10 years, 12 years. Because if we can stack those little wins up and we can move a little bit of dirt every single day, and whether that be in the gym or outside of the gym, and then there's going to be weeks where things come up and we can't do anything, and we do that over a long period of time, it adds up. It's going to compound. And we're going to get what our ultimate goal is and get to where we want to go. So we want to be consistent over the long term and not get too wrapped up with missing things in the short term. So when it comes to training and when it comes to trying to continue on a habit that you've built, you're going to have bad weeks. You're even going to have bad months. But don't let that ruin the whole habit, especially if you've done the hard work to implement it in the first place. And you know what a decent plan is for you. You know when you can do things. You know what the frequency looks like. If you've got a plan and it's worked, just get back to that plan. You're going to potentially miss a day or miss a week, and that's okay. And some weeks it might mean just doing what you can when you can. And that's also okay. But don't let it all fall in a heap, and certainly don't feel guilty because you've had to miss a week, because you've had to prioritize family over the top of training. Because I think we can all say with a fair bit of surety that at some point we're going to have to do that, and that's okay. We do need to spend time for ourselves. We do need to spend time on ourselves in order to serve and be a more capable father and human being. However, things are going to happen and shit's going to happen. Life's going to throw a deload week at you whether you like it or not. And you've got to be prepared for that, and you've got to be prepared just to get back to whatever the plan is the next week. So hopefully that helps. Let me know if you've been caught in that mindset where you feel guilty and you feel like you've got to play catch up. It's a slippery slope for a lot of people, and it's something that I want to try and get out there to try and help the people that I work with and the people that I don't work with that listen to this podcast hopefully get out of it and start moving forward. If you're having trouble with it and you find like you're constantly caught in that cycle of not being able to stay consistent with training, or that you're missing things here and there, potentially it might mean that you need to adjust the plan that you're looking at. And if you need help with it, reach out. There's opportunity there to have a free call with me where I can have a look at your training. I can have a look at what you're doing and potentially lend you some free advice around how to move forward, what the best way to move forward is. So thanks for listening. I appreciate each and every single one of you. Like, share, subscribe, and follow us on the socials, and I will see you next week. Bye now.